made specific liberating structures work for my teams. And completely honest, I expect this to be 20, maybe 30 minutes on purpose so that we can really talk and get perspectives from other people and get your questions out there. Because one of the biggest things with liberating structures is you really just have to try it. You can't just kind of say, wow, that's a lot of information. I don't know what to do with it. You know what? I'm going to give you back hopefully at least a half an hour today so you can go and try one, or at least look it up. Okay? So principles, there's a lot on this slide, and I hate putting a ton of words on a single slide, but as I mentioned, the whole point of why these things exist is to kind of shift how we go about meetings. So they're called microstructures, and really all that means is how you interact. So that's why the title goes into spice up your interactions, because it's not just a formal meeting. You know, it could be your Scrum events, it could be just how you have a conversation with someone. There's a lot of different ways we interact with people, and these are just kind of new ways to think about it. And I'll go through exactly what that means here in a couple slides. But ideally, these are a lot of things we talk about in the Agile world, and this is, Cedar Valley Agile Meetup, right? So think about this. We learn about failing forward. We build trust as we go. We have that freedom, that autonomy, that self-organization we talk about in Agile and Scrum. So all of these things really align with what we're preaching within our Agile community. And so that's where I think liberating structures just lines up perfectly, and we can use them in every aspect of what we do. And then here's a little bit, there's a little quote here from Agile Alliance about what is Agile and why is it important. But I wanted to put this in here again to emphasize, liberating structures isn't this weird thing that doesn't apply in our Agile world. It is something that is very in line with our principles, with the definition of Agile, and where we want to go to truly inspect and adapt and encourage teams to make the call and have the freedom to do what they think is best, and truly have that creativity and innovation. All right, let's go into some details about what in the world is she talking about and what are these liberating structures. So there's 5 conventional methods. I think we've all been in these meetings. Presentation, like I'm doing right now, right? Some people are probably on their email or on their phones, not really getting a chance to get their 2 cents in because I haven't asked for feedback or questions, and you're just sitting here listening to me. Not super engaging, right? But it's an option, right? It's something we use every day. Managed discussion, kind of a similar idea, except usually there's a facilitator, right? Status report, sometimes daily Scrum feels like a status report, right? It's not always a conversation or collaboration. And again, in terms of how much you're actually getting that conversation going, those were the first 3 are kind of limited, right? You don't always get a chance to get your voice heard. And then we have open discussion, which is more what I consider chaos. You have a lot of people with a lot of different personalities and a lot of perspectives, and you leave a 2-hour session going, so what do we decide? You don't actually know. And only sometimes the really, loud, very comfortable in big groups type of people will get heard. And some of us, me included, we can be a little bit more quiet. And so we fall into the background, and open discussion is very uncomfortable because it's not managed in any way. It's the complete opposite of a managed discussion, right? Brainstorm, kind of consider that on the same realm. It can be a little chaotic. There's a lot going on. You don't always hear from people. Or you hear from everyone, but then do you really have actionable items? Do you really know what's going on next? So these are, again, just 5 conventional methods, and I'll give you all the resources to this material as well as Liberating Structures website and their book here at the end of my presentation, so you know how I got all this information and how you can apply it. So these microstructures, these are the ways that we can look at these conventional methods and say, hey, there's got to be a better way, right? There's more than 30 of them. I think it was like 33 or something. And again, designed to include and engage everyone. And the really cool thing about them is some are very short, little 10, 15-minute things. Others are longer. But the neat part is you can take these different types of structures and how you meet with people and interact with people and string them together. So instead of having this 5 conventional methods alphabet that you're choosing from when you're meeting with people or conducting a Scrum event, now you can have 30 or more, and you can string them together and create different combinations and kind of learn as you go to make it something different than just a presentation. We're going to take it to be from just a presentation to being kind of a little bit of a networking, a learning what people are challenging, kind of going through how do we bring that around and help others and maybe do a little bit of the consulting. There's a lot of ways where you can get an entire room of people, whether it's a small group or a large group, and get everyone involved. So let's go through, first of all, well, how do you know, right? You're saying there's 30 or more. How do I know what to choose? So there's a handy dandy reference if you go to their website or use their book called Selection Matchmaker. And this PDF is actually available online for free, so you can get it anywhere. It's just a little screenshot of what it looks like. But you can go through the little matrix you see here and check what objectives you're trying to do. So for example, let's look at number 12 here in the center of the page. Specify only the absolute must do and must not do to achieving a purpose. This I happen to know is the MinSpec liberating structure. And the idea being, we go into a big group meeting and maybe there's like a ton of stuff. There's a lot going on. It's this brainstorm. I have so much on my plate. But what's our MinSpecs? How are we going to operate? What is the absolute thing we must walk out of here with? That's just one example. I mean, there's tons of ways to apply this, but it's kind of one of those ways to say, yes, you have a lot to say. How can we narrow that down? A way that I've personally used MinSpecs is with more of like a working agreement with your teams. A lot of people have different perspectives on how we should work, and we create this list of maybe 30-some things that are on a working agreement. But in terms of what really makes sense and what are we truly going to hold ourselves accountable to, that's where you can use MinSpecs to help you to narrow it down a little bit and make sure that it's really the things you're going to focus on instead of having this crazy long list of things you're probably going to forget about in a couple hours, right? So that's just one way that you can use this matchmaker. You check the boxes of what you want and what your objectives are, and then if you turn it over afterward, it tells you exactly what liberating structure applies to that objective, and it will help you narrow it down to string them together to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So it's super easy. Again, I encourage you, because I intend this session to be short, to go out there, look at their website, and give it a try. All right, let's do some more practical applications, because you're probably still sitting there going, I have no idea what she's talking about still. She just keeps saying liberating structures. So let's go through it. One of my favorites is What I Need From You. This is a great team building activity, especially if you have a new or a reforming team, because it helps maybe with some of those difficult conversations around reforming teams, or if they're a new team, they haven't quite built the trust, they don't know each other. What I Need From You allows that conversation to happen. It's a very short exercise with a quick, what are kind of the two things you need, and then it's a brief response of a yes, no, or I don't understand what you're saying, but it kind of just gets to the point. And it also sets the stage for what are people's expectations? Are there kind of mixed messages, or maybe we're not on the same page? And you kind of learn to understand others' thought processes. And it helps set the stage. Again, whether it's a new team, existing team, reforming team, this is a great opportunity to use What I Need From You to ensure that everyone can work well together and build that relationship. What, so what, now what? I heard some of my teammates on the phone, so I know they're probably giggling right now because we've used this one several times. This is a great retro activity. So if you're on a Scrum team, this is one I really love to use because it really drills down into not just the whole traditional retro format of what went well, what didn't, and what are action items, or the stop, start, continue, right? The traditional stuff that we tend to use, and challenges it to say, okay, here's our list of what happened. Okay, so what is the, why do I care? Why does it even matter? Does it even matter? And then now what? Okay, that's great. We've determined what it is, why it matters, what are we gonna do about it? And gives you that concrete step of what's our game plan that you can walk away with. Super helpful, highly recommended for retro. 1, 2, 4, all. This is one I've never used on its own. It's usually, kind of strung together with other liberating structures. But essentially what it allows you to do is hear from literally everyone in the room. And I'm talking, I've used this in a room of 100 people, and it works, and it's awesome. And the premise is you start with 1 minute of self-reflection, just you. The 2 is the pairing up with someone else. 2 minutes, you talk through what was your self-reflection on whatever the prompt or topic was. Sometimes I like to use things like, what is the biggest challenge you're facing? That's a really easy topic then for people to reflect, to share with one person, and then to share in a group of 4. And they kind of come to a consensus. I mean, what's the biggest thing that's going on? And then you can hear from everyone in the room, get it out in the open, create that transparency that we talk about in Agile and Scrum. And it's just a great way, again, to make sure that you're not leaving anyone out and you hear all sorts of different perspectives. Triz is another awesome retro option. Instead of kind of talking about good, bad kind of stuff, it starts with a very different premise. How can we be the worst possible team ever? That's the whole idea. So you're completely flipping everything over. Instead of how can we be better, let's think of all the ways we could be terrible. But then, are we doing things that are already in line with being terrible? And how can we maybe stop those or improve practices so that our team can get better? So it's really just a mental shift in how you think about it, but it has really unleashed some creative ideas from my teams to help them to grow and improve and just take that different perspective. Super cool. 2510 crowdsourcing, another way, kind of like 1, 2, 4 all, to hear from everyone, but in this one you get to actually have everyone in the room vote on each and every idea that is put forward. So a very neat way to kind of get an idea of where all these new thoughts and insights stand amongst the entire group that's involved. Shift and share, I think of this as like the science fair sprint review. A lot of people talk about like the bazaar style or the marketplace style. It's very similar in that way, but you don't have to use it only for sprint review. You can use it in other forms of knowledge sharing or cross-training that you might have in your organization. It's a really fun way to just like a science fair. You can go, station to station and learn about different things and give feedback and have conversations. And it changes it from just sitting in a room, listening to a presentation, to actually getting engaged and moving around. Heard, seen, respected, another great team building opportunity. Again, building trust, breaking down barriers, ensuring that everyone has that opportunity. In this case, you have to be a little vulnerable and share a personal story, but it is a game changer for having everyone work together. And then impromptu networking is saved for last because it's probably my favorite. Is a great way to start off any meeting, and I say any meeting because I mean it. I have used it for various training opportunities and things, and essentially all it is I'll ask a question and then I'll say, now go talk to 3 different people. Now there is a time box, of course, because I'm a Scrum Master, but you go around and you talk to people about the topic, you learn from other people, you're networking in the process, it gets the blood flowing, it gets it kicked off with a positive vibe instead of this, oh, I have to sit here for an hour-long presentation on something. No, we get up, we get moving, we talk, we get all your input, and we hear from everyone. So it's definitely one of my favorites, and I think very, very versatile. All right, as I promised, this is going to be one of the shorter presentations, and I'm at 20 minutes, which is perfect. So again, I can't take any credit for Liberating Structures, so I'm providing you with references of how you can get more information. If you navigate to their website, PDFs are available for that selection matchmaker on how to choose what liberating structures you might want to try. There's also PDFs around what are the liberating structure principles and kind of why do those matter and what do those really mean. They might be a little vague, but they give you a definition of what they mean and how you can apply those principles. If you have questions, of course, you're welcome to send me an email. I'd be happy to assist you if you were trying something and need additional assistance. And again, as I mentioned right at the beginning, learn by doing. I'm giving you extra time in this session today. Go back to your desk, look it up online, think about questions, try one, write out objectives. This is your chance to just give it a go instead of only keeping those 5 conventional methods as your only options, because there are so many more, and Liberating Structures is just one tool available to us. So that's all I had. What's in the way for questions or additional information from anyone else? No questions?
Actually, I was just going to say, great job with the presentation. I appreciate the really high level overview that you gave. the one thing, you gave some examples. What has been kind of, you went on some of your favorite. What's your least favorite liberating structure, or the one that maybe you struggle with the most?
There are definitely some that are a little more complicated. There's one called eco cycle planning, which sounds really cool, and it's all around, like, for example, if you run with Scrum teams, what are maybe some practices that we're doing that maybe we should kind of, get rid of, what are things that we should recycle, continue, and it goes through this little figure eight process of where do all of our practices and behaviors fall on this little line of continuum. I have found with teams that can be hard to understand and it can be hard to facilitate, and not everyone picks up on the concept. So in terms of least favorite, that's definitely on my list.
Thank you for sharing.
Anyone else? What about our participants from South Africa? Do you have anything you can add on liberating structures?
I'm quite curious about the combos. Like, is there like a general format that you like comboing or like following, and when would you use them? I mean,
Like to string them together, you mean?
yes, yes. And I'm curious. I mean, retros are always our playground. But what about the other events? Yeah. So like backlog refinement or planning. Yeah, what fun have you had with that?
And I haven't used liberating structures necessarily in every Scrum event or activity, but kind of how I mentioned, like impromptu networking, that can be just one of those like small liberating structures that only takes a short time. And there's many more out there. I don't want you to think that I'm stuck on these ones, that you can use in any, method, in any forum, should we say, right? So it doesn't have to be just because this particular one works better in retro or in any particular way. But just, I guess, learn by doing, and I'm still learning. So in terms of how have I used it, like in planning and refinement, I don't always, because I'm still learning myself. But I'm trying to at least incorporate some of those, shorter activities to get people talking right off the bat. So we're kind of setting the stage for a good conversation going forward.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining.
This is Lindsay from Waverly, and we did a fishbowl thing when we met with our business. We were going through a problem, and it was really a neat experience because it got us engaged with them, and they explained their process, and we were able to ask them questions and like iterate through. So it was really interesting. They sat in a group in the middle, and we sat outside of them, and so they spoke to each other about their problems, and we took notes. It was a time box, and then we came back and asked them more questions, and then they elaborated on the process, and I asked for feedback afterwards. We had never done it, and it was really positive, and they really liked us being engaged with them and listening to them.
That's a great example, Lindsay. Thank you. All right, last call for questions. All right. Well, I'm going to say thank you to everyone for joining. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. But again, learn by doing. Go head out on that Liberating Structures website or order the book if you prefer paper format. And I hope they help you with your meetings going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Elyse.